Hey there, welcome to my channel. I'm Sarah, and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book Freakout tag. So I think this is my first tag on this channel, if I'm remembering correctly, so I'm excited. Okay, so let's get started. So the first question is, favorite book you've read so far this year? Best book you've read in 2019. Okay, so I want to go one of two ways, and in the end, I did pick one, but my runner-up was actually The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which was one of the first books I read this year, and I was obsessed with it. It was my absolute favorite hate to love, and I just, like, there was nothing about it that I didn't like. It was 5 stars all the way. I loved it, and, like, I loved it so much. But then along came The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. So this is another hate to love, but this one comes out on top because I feel like, and I've said it over and over again, the conflict in this book was just so much more valid than the conflict in like any other new adult romance or even contemporary romance. A lot of times the conflict can be solved, you know, the whole conflict is caused by just miscommunication, or like the whole thing could be resolved with one good conversation, two people, like two adults sitting down together and saying, hey, this is what's going on, and then that would be the end of it. This one was a little bit more complicated than that, and I think that's what makes this book come out on top of The Hating Game, even though I loved The Hating Game with every corner of my heart. This one's just a little bit better to me. So my favorite book so far this year has been The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. 2 is the best sequel you've read so far in 2019. And this one, it's not a book that came out in 2019. I don't even think it came out in like 2018. I think it's a little older than that. 2017. So it's a little bit older, but it is my favorite sequel that I've read so far this year, and that is The Beauty of Darkness by Mary E. Pearson. I loved this whole series. I'm pretty sure I gave them all 5 stars. Like, I was obsessed with this, and this was just like a fantastic conclusion to what started as kind of like a meh young adult series. So the Kiss of Deception starts out, and it's just, you have this princess and she's supposed to marry this prince, and she ends up running away. So she's on the run, and there's 2 men following her, like hunting her down, and one is the prince and one is an assassin that was sent to kill her. And it was a really good time. But if you had just left it at that, it would have just been kind of like, oh, okay, oh, that was such a good book. It was so cute. I loved it. But then that would have been the end of it. The world that Mary E. Pearson expands in The Heart of Betrayal and The Beauty of Darkness is just so much more involved than the first book would ever lead you to believe. And this was just such a good conclusion. I loved it so much, and I'm so glad that I read it in 2019 so that I can include it in this tag. Question 3 is new release you haven't read yet but want to. Okay, so I don't really, like, I'm completely blanking, and I really don't want to have to, like, go through and, like, look at everything. But the only book I can think of off the top of my head that I really want to read, and I don't honestly even know if it's released yet or not, and I don't remember who the author is, but it's called Fix Her Up. It's like a fluffy, I don't know, it might be new adult or like contemporary romance, but it's just one of those like type of books that's kind of fluffy, kind of steamy, just a quick read that you know is going to be enjoyable. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And for me, that is going to be Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. I think it comes out in October, September, October? I think it's October. So it comes out in October of 2019, and I am just so excited for it. I have only read 2 books by Christina Lauren so far. I read The Unhoneymooners, which is my favorite book so far this year. And then I think the first book I read this year was Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, which I think I gave it either 4 or 5 stars, but I really enjoyed that one too. And then I actually own Love and Other Words, so I'm going to read that eventually. But yeah, Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren is my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So question number 5 is biggest disappointment. So I haven't really read a whole lot of books that I didn't like this year, so I don't really have much for this one. The only one I can really think of that was kind of a disappointment was Love Your Life, Not Theirs by Rachel Cruz. When I went into this, I was hoping for a little bit more insight on how to deal with contentment issues and like seeing everyone have all this nice stuff while you're just trying to pay off debt so you don't have a lot of money to buy new things. And really all it was kind of a regurgitation of Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, like Baby Steps book, which I had already read. So it wasn't necessarily like disappointing. I still feel like I'm still kind of like, I'm glad I read it and I'm glad that I experienced the steps in a different voice, but it's just not exactly, like it didn't give me exactly what I was looking for. So I feel like this was kind of a disappointment. But I mean, if this is my most disappointing book of 2019, I think I'm doing okay. Number 6 is Your Biggest Surprise. And for me, it was The Lux by Anna Goberson. So when I went into these books, I read, it's a quartet, and I read all of them, like one right after the other. So I didn't necessarily go into it looking for like great literature or anything, but I guess it's the biggest surprise just because I was surprised at how I finished the first one and I just wanted to like continue on. Like it hooked me so much more than I thought it would. I thought it was just going to be kind of like a light, fluffy, Gossip Girl type thing to get me through my commute. I listened to them on audiobook on my way to work, and I just figured it would be some light, fluffy, stupid thing while I was waiting for my next hold to come in from the library. And no, I ended up returning, like, the book that I was waiting for ended up getting returned because I was so busy listening to the whole Lux series one right after the other on my commute because I enjoyed it so much. So for me, that was very surprising because, who would have thought, like, a random, 1890s Gossip Girl, New York style situation would win out over something that I was actually looking forward to reading. I flew through those and they were all pretty good. Number 7 is Favorite New Author, and this one is kind of a tie, but I'm leaning toward one, and so I'll talk about that one first, and that is Alyssa Cole. She wrote the Reluctant Royal series, and I blew through those. Just like the Lux series, I ended up blowing through them one right after the other. In the wrong order, like almost the complete backwards order of how you were supposed to read them, but I flew through all of them. I started with like one of the novellas, and then I read A Duke by Default, and then I read A Princess in Theory, which was actually the first one, and then I read Once Ghosted, Twice Shy. And I'm still waiting on, what is it, A Prince on Paper? Which is actually, see, now I'll be in the right order because that was the most recent one that came out, I think. So, yeah, I read all of them so fast and I loved them all. They were so good. So Alyssa Cole is definitely like an auto-read author for me now. Anything she comes out with in the future, I will definitely read because I was just so surprised by how much I fell into her stories. And I just love that whole, the whole corner of the world that her characters are in. I loved everything about it. It was so cute and I really enjoyed myself with every single one of those books. The other one is definitely Christina Lauren, and these are obviously just new to me authors. I don't really have a favorite new debut author because I'm pretty sure I haven't read any debut authors yet this year that I know of off the top of my head. But yeah, these are 2 new to me authors and I love them. Christina Lauren, I've only read, like I said, the 2 books by her, but The Honeymooners was my most anticipated release of like the first half of the year, and Twice in a Blue Moon is my most anticipated release of the second half of the year. So the fact that I've read 2 books by them and 2 of their books are my 2 like top most anticipated books of the year should really say something. I love them. So far, I love everything I've read, and Love in Other Words, like I said, I own it and it's on my list of books to read, not in July, but who knows, I might just pick it up anyway. TBRs, me, what? TBRs? We don't follow TBRs on this channel. Yeah, so Alyssa Cole and Christina Lauren are definitely my favorite new to me authors of the year. Number 8 is Newest Fictional Crush. I don't really get crushes on book characters, but I mean, no, I don't really get crushes on book characters, so I'm just gonna skip that one. I guess if anything, I would say I really like Caden in the Remnant Chronicles series, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a crush. I just really liked him as a character. So yeah, we're gonna kind of skip that one. And then number 9 is newest favorite character. Okay, so one character from one book I've read this year sticks out in my mind so much. So earlier this year, I read Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, and Light Song had me cracking up every time he was in a scene. I loved him so much. Like, he was so funny. He was my favorite character in the book, besides one character that I mean, I'm sure it's not really a spoiler, but I don't want to spoil, so if it is a spoiler, I'm not going to say. I did have one other character in that book that I was absolutely obsessed with that might be my favorite character, but I'm not going to say who it was because it's kind of a character that you wouldn't know is a character until you've read the book. Which, if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't, I probably sound like a crazy person. Anyway, Light Song from Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson is hilarious, and I love him, and I want to be his friend. So, yeah, that's my answer for number 9. Number 10 is a book that made you cry. So, I don't really cry during books necessarily, but one book that I read that made me really emotional was A River in Darkness, One Man's Escape from North Korea by Masaji Ishikawa. It was a memoir written by a man about, you guessed it, his escape from North Korea. And like, his journey in that book was just so heartbreaking that it actually took me a long time to read that book because I had to keep putting it down because it was so hard for me in my comfortable life to wrap my comfortable little brain around the fact that people live like that. And even to this day, like, his story started in, I believe, the 60s and went to the 90s or early 2000s. But even today, like, people live like that in this world. And it was just so hard for me to experience firsthand, like through a firsthand account, that it took me a long time to get through it. I don't think I actually cried, but it was definitely very emotionally draining. Number 11, book that made you happy. So for this one, I think I'm going to go with Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, just because Hazel made me happy because she was just so authentically herself and she didn't care what other people thought of her. She was just like unapologetically Hazel. And even though while I was reading it, sometimes I got a little bit annoyed with her, it was just so refreshing to have a character that was so quirky and so like manic, but just okay with it, and she was okay with herself. So that book just made me happy. I like when characters are unapologetically themselves. And yeah, Hazel's definitely that. Number 12 is most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. So for this one, it's a little bit of a weird, I don't know if everyone will necessarily think this is a beautiful cover, but something about this cover speaks to me. I just think it is gorgeous. And I don't actually really know anything about this book. I haven't read this book, but it was pretty much a cover buy. So, and that is In a Treacherous Court by Michelle Diener. And I just think that is the prettiest cover. I don't even know why, but like the detailing around the tea and like shiny, the dress is gorgeous. Like, just something about this cover just calls to me. I just love it so much. So I know this isn't like your typical most beautiful cover, you know, whatever, but something about this cover, just personal preference, to me, I think this cover is gorgeous. So number 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So many. So many. So my goal for this year is to kind of finish up some series that I've been working on. So I need to read A Court of Wings and Ruin because I still haven't read it, no matter how much I love that series. I want to continue on in A Song of Ice and Fire, which means I need to get reading A Storm of Swords, and then there's still, 2 other books after that I have in the house because it's my husband's favorite series. So he owns them, so I have them whenever I need them, but I just need to actually make it through A Storm of Swords, which is on my July TBR. I want to finish Becoming by Michelle Obama. I'm really looking forward to that Christina Lauren book. I want to read Love in Other Words. I want to make it through some of my TBR jar books. What else do I want to read? I don't know. There's just so many books coming out, like Fix Her Up. I want to read that. There's just so many books that I want to read before the end of the year. And I know I can always read them next year, but there's just always so many books. There's just more and more books. And never enough time. So I guess that's where the freakout comes in this video. There's never enough time to read all the books. So yeah, that's my mid-year freakout book tag. I hope you enjoyed. And yeah, I'm not going to tag anyone. Is that a thing people do in tag videos? I don't know. But I'm not going to do it. But yeah, this was fun. Maybe I'll do more tags. We'll see. Yeah. All right. I guess that's it for today. I will see you later. Bye.